Hello again and welcome to another bearing removal and installation video featuring Boca bearings. Today's engine is an ASP65 FS, a 4-stroke engine, and these are really kind of rare to find on the market right now. I just so happen to be lucky enough to have one of these, and it's completely disassembled and ready to have the bearings removed. Just before we get to the table and do that, I just want to remind you all that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this is a cause that both I and the Boca bearing family take very seriously. So, with that said, let's go straight to the table and remove some bearings. So here on the table I've got all the items necessary to do this bearing removal. I've got a piece of wood here that I'm going to use on the crankshaft to tap that out along with my light hammer. I've got a wood dowel and a flat nose punch. I'm not sure which one I'll use. It depends on the fitment once the crankshaft is out. And of course I've got my ASP65 4-stroke crankcase here with the crankshaft and bearings, original bearings still installed, and I also have my desk vise, and off to the side here I've got my heat glove and my heat gun. So it's maybe kind of tough to tell from just looking at it like this, maybe not, but the ASP 4-stroke engines were modeled after, or they were clones of the OS Surpass series engines. So they've got this front mounted camshaft gear with the bearings in here and in the cover, which we will not be removing at this time. They are fine. But other than that, it's basically the clone of the Surpass series engine. So let's go ahead and start heating this crankcase up and get these bearings out. Now, this thing's pretty sticky. It's a low time engine, but it's been sitting for several years. Hopefully that'll be enough to tap this bearing out here, or the crankshaft first. Yeah, that was easy. Okay, so that came out, and our bearing came out on the crankshaft, which is fine. Now to get this front bearing out, let's see, do I want to use the wood dowel? Oh wow, look at that. All I had to do is just touch that front bearing and that came out. So there we go, we're out. This has some kind of a strange little washer that came out with it. I don't ever remember seeing that. I am wondering if that's I don't know what that is. This doesn't seem too hot. Let's see if this is going to give me any trouble. So to get this bearing off of here, I'll basically just be putting this punch up here. In fact, I'm probably going to get a larger punch now. Larger punch up here, stand it up like this and just tap it until it comes down. And just kind of rotate it around. And there we have it. That is the best way to get a rear bearing off a crankshaft. The only challenge is when you come across a crankshaft that doesn't have cutouts for the counterweight, or they may be cut out but yet there's still a portion of it that's here so that it's a complete circle. And then if you don't have any kind of gap there, it can be a little bit more challenging. So a lot more heat might be required, and then maybe just kind of pry it out with a screwdriver just to get enough gap so you can try and catch it like that. But other than that, that's all there is to removing these bearings. So I'm going to go clean these parts up and we'll get ready for the bearing installation. Okay, so here I've got all the cleaned up parts of the crankcase is all cleaned up, and the crankshaft is all cleaned up. And I've got everything else I need to install these bearings. So I've got my same piece of wood here, hammer. Really, now it's getting really beat up. Short socket extension to use a drive to put the crankshaft in. I've got my bottle of Lightning Lube Road Power that I like to use as my reassembly lubricant, and of course my jar to put that in. And I've got the Boca bearing kits here, or the bearings for this engine, which just include, this kit just includes the main crankshaft and the front bearing, because I'm not replacing the camshaft bearings. And this kit number is ENK-018. So let's go ahead and get these bearings out, and I will get them prepped. The front bearing needs to have a seal removed, or one of the shields removed, and it looks like the rear bearing on this kit is ready to go as it is, so that's always nice. So let me get this front, one of these shields removed here. I just kind of go in here right at the inner part of the race with a small screwdriver and just push in, lift up, and pop that shield right out just like that. So that's done. Now what we can do is we can get these parts lubricated up. Now I've got a little bit left in here from the last bearing change, so I'm going to move that bottle out of the way. I think I've got enough here to get this lubricated all up. So I'm going to put some here in the front, and this just really helps the installation process, especially when you couple that with heating the aluminum up. So this one, I might actually be able to get my finger in there and do the inner part of this race too, not like I really need to. So there we go. These are ready to go. So now I always install the rear bearing on the crankshaft first. And that is because when I go to put the front bearing in, which goes in first, this acts as a centering mechanism, so that makes sure this bearing gets installed and the crankshaft goes in there nice and straight. So let me get my glove on. We'll heat this crankcase up a little bit, and we'll get these bearings installed. Hopefully that'll be enough to just kind of, this front bearing came, look at that. I didn't even have to tap that. That front bearing just dropped right in there, so it expanded enough, and now once it cools it should just grab onto that. So let's see what happens with this rear bearing. See, that's so loose it wanted to pull that out, and look at this. I just pushed that in place with my hand. Now I don't know that it's necessarily seated fully, so I'm still gonna tap that in just to make sure. But I mean, this is probably about as simple as it gets here. Now I did feel it go down a little bit. So there you go. Nice brand new set of Boca bearings in this engine will keep this engine happy and healthy for many years to come. And that's all there is to installing a set of bearings in this ASP 65 FS engine.